Okay, so thank you all for attending. Again, this 1-hour webinar is called Tips and Strategies for Implementing Successful Discussion Board Forums in Blackboard. And my name is Caroline Conlon. I'm the e-learning design coordinator in Faculty Development and Instructional Design Center. And I'm also joined today by my colleague Dan Cabrera. Many of you may have worked with Dan previously. So again, thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I thought I would just find out, you know, if you have experience with the discussion board. It is a fairly well-known tool for Blackboard. So if you can, let me know if you've used the discussion board either as an instructor or as a student just by using that green check mark again. That would be great. Okay, great. And now I can see that Sabia can hear me, so that's great. Looks like most of you are familiar with the discussion board, and one of you hasn't used it at all or that much. So what we're gonna do is first talk a little bit about the use of the discussion board, and then I'm gonna walk you through some of the you know, Blackboard specific features that I wanted to focus on. And we should have some time afterwards where I can share my screen with you and actually walk you through some of the more, you know, a live version of creating a forum and looking at some of the settings that we're going to explore today. So first, let's talk about why use the discussion board. So that seems like a good starting point for today's session. And the first thing you want to think about is whether you're teaching an online class or a face-to-face class, or if it's blended. The discussion board is going to allow for an asynchronous conversation to take place between your students. And what that means, what the word asynchronous is referring to, is that this is outside of class time. So one student is posting a comment at 5 in the afternoon and the other one is posting a comment at 5 in the morning. So that's kind of the idea behind asynchronous. It provides an opportunity for your students to read, research, reflect, and compose their post. So ideally, the discussion board is going to be used for to kind of elicit those more substantive responses from your students, rather than, you know, just asking them simple, more objective questions. You really want to kind of construct questions that are going to get them to do a little research, provide their own analysis or perspective on a question. The discussion board also is a good tool in that it allows, it kind of levels the playing field for everyone. So quieter, more reserved students have a voice. If you've ever encountered in your class folks that are shy and don't really want to raise their hand and give an answer or share an experience, this kind of neutralizes that and gives them a voice. Another benefit about the discussion board is that information that is shared becomes a permanent part of the class, and students can then revisit that information when needed. Additionally, you know, once it's in Blackboard, you can archive that information, and you'll have that information stored really for as long as you need it. So it is a great, it is a great way for information sharing to take place, and then the students can come back and the information is still there. And also, it fosters active learning and collaboration in your class. And you know, this kind of plays into online teaching. If you were doing an online or blended learning class, you really want to provide opportunities where the students are creating and disseminating the knowledge and information. Rather than them just being recipients of information, they're also creating the information. So that's kind of what's meant behind active learning. And if anyone has feel free to raise your hand if you have other uses for the discussion board. Again, we can open this conversation up, so don't hesitate to chime in. Oh, looks like Dan has a question. Go ahead, Dan.
Hello, Carolyn. You'd asked about whether we use the discussion board in other ways, and you mentioned collaboration. Well, one of the ways that I found to be very useful in getting the students to collaborate or even get a sense of community is by having them respond to each other's postings and actually almost having a discussion. And looking at some of the second postings that students have made, I've seen I could almost hear the voices of the students talking to each other, you know. And of course, I set the groundwork and the ground rules, I should say. And I say it's not simply like I agree with what you said or right on. It has to be much more comprehensive. And so when they respond to another student's postings, it really is a discussion. And you're right, because students have an opportunity to think about, to reflect the response, and to compose a post. It's not just off the top of their head. They're thinking about it, and consequently their responses are much more fuller and comprehensive.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way to use the discussion board when you want to create that kind of dialogue or conversation outside of the classroom. And it becomes really important to have that kind of activity and collaboration in your class if you're not seeing your students every week. So that kind of removes any feeling of isolation if say you were teaching a blended or online class. So thank you, Dan. Great point. So what are some of the potential downfalls of the discussion board? Postings may lack substance if not graded, or if graded on word count versus content. So certainly if your students are going to spend the time to research, reflect, and you know, kind of engage in that more substantive discussion board, they want to know that there's going to be some benefit to that. So if we highly recommend using discussion board forums for grading purposes, and I'm going to be showing a little bit of that later on. So, but if it's not graded, you know, what's the incentive for them? Certainly you would want to include some feedback, though, if you were not going to grade the discussion board forums. And also you want to, if you are going to grade more on the subjective nature of the posting rather than word count, so that the student isn't just typing his post in Microsoft Word and, you know, waiting for that 500 word count to hit and then pasting it. So we're going to look at rubrics a little bit later. That's going to give you an idea of how you can grade more subjectively. Also, students have reported that it can be burdensome if there are a lot of other assignments. So be mindful of the fact that this can be time-consuming. And if you do have a lot of other assignments, you know, you might want to make some adjustments somewhere, because if you're having them contribute to a forum every week, that could take, you know, an hour or several hours depending on how much work is involved in them using the discussion board. And also students may feel contributing is a waste of time if there is no feedback or no dialogue occurs. So as the instructor, you definitely want to show that you're engaged in the discussion board by, you know, you can join in the conversation and ask them to elaborate, or, you know, tell them that they had a great point in their posting. So just by showing that you're paying attention to the forum, that's going to go a long way with your students. Additionally, when I speak about a dialogue, a lot of times there's kind of a formula with the discussion board where you might have your students do one original post and then they reply to 2 other students or 1 other student. That's going to help encourage that dialogue. So by making those kinds of expectations, that'll be, you know, that'll kind of encourage the dialogue and conversation. So what are some of the characteristics of good discussion questions? You want to provide questions that are open-ended and exploratory, and on that same point, avoid objective, factual questions that have a single answer. So really, you know, if you're having your students post a response on, you know, what year did the Civil War end, then the first person who answers that question, there's really not much for the other people to say. So you really want to have a question that's going to provide an opportunity for students to give their own intake or analysis or perspective on a topic, something that requires a little research. Also, good discussion questions require understanding and use of core concepts while applying this knowledge to varied scenarios. So certainly don't have them create posts on topics that are foreign to them, so you stick to the core concepts and then kind of branch out, allow them to explore different perspectives. So some ideas of good discussion questions. Okay, so we're going to turn the focus right now to some of the Blackboard specific items that I wanted to cover. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts or comments that they want to share? Okay, I will move forward. All right, so our tip number 1 is to create a help forum. So a help forum is great because it reduces the amount of email that you get from students. It doesn't have to be called help. It can be called FAQs or, you know, Q&A, whatever you want to name it. And what you do is you would instruct your students to post general questions that they may have about the course to this forum. If your students send you an email and ask you a question, you can just politely say, please refer to or please post your question to the discussion forum. And that way, your answers will be visible to everyone. And if there's another student that has the same question, that's one less email that you're going to receive. It also gives the opportunity for students to help each other. So maybe another student is going to see the question before you, and they can jump in and answer the question. So it's a great idea to use this forum. Again, it really can cut down on your email, so a big incentive there. And what I've done here is just provided a screenshot of the forum settings. And what this is showing is that if you do create a help forum, you can enable subscriptions to that forum. And if you'll notice here, let me get my little pointer here. We have our subscribe section, and by default, when you create a forum in Blackboard, it's going to be set to not allow subscriptions. So you want to allow members to subscribe to the forum and also to include a body of the post in the email. That way, you're going to get a direct email immediately of any questions that show up on the help forum. So if you're not checking Blackboard every day, at least you're going to be, you know, you're going to have a clue as to anything that needs attention in this help forum. So that's a great trick, and again, this is a setting that you have to enable in Blackboard. And this screen is really just showing that once you enable that setting, all you have to do is click on the subscribe button here. That's going to be available to both you and your students. And once you click that, it's instantaneous. Okay, so Corinne, you had a question about the subscriptions. So for the help forum, what I'm recommending, and you can do this for any forum, you can enable a subscription to the forum, and that's going to send you an email when someone posts something new to the forum. So it would be really a good idea if you were going to create a help forum to enable these subscriptions. And that way, you know, if you're not checking Blackboard, if a day goes by, at least you're going to get the email. You can log into Blackboard and attend to whatever problem there might be. So, and on this screen, once you enable that setting, you're going to see this little subscribe button here, and both you and your students can take advantage of it. So that's the subscription feature. Sabia, go ahead and talk if you have a question. You just have to hit the talk button.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. I had just one button, a question about the subscribe button. Do students have to subscribe as well, like individually, or when we enable the subscribe button, does each student also receive emails when something is posted?
Great question. The students, if they wanted to subscribe, they can. So it's optional. And once they hit that subscribe button, it's going to be immediate. And every time a new post gets added, they're going to get an email of that. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. And also, if they did subscribe to it and decided they didn't want to get those emails anymore, what would show up on the screen would be a button that says unsubscribe. So it's as quickly as you can subscribe, you can also take your name to be removed from the subscription list. So it's kind of nice because you can turn it on and off at your discretion. Okay, so moving on from the help forum and the subscriptions, another option is to create a social forum for off-topic discussion. And that can be helpful if you notice that perhaps in some of the more topical discussion forums, your students are getting off topic. So you create, like here we call it the Cyber Cafe, but it can be called whatever you like. But it just provides a place for them to, have a conversation that's not related to any of the discussion forums. So that's another feature you might want to consider. When you are creating forums that you are going to require your students to participate in, so in these examples, the students are required to participate, and I've stated clearly that the discussion is going to close. In this situation, it's every Friday at midnight. So I put that information right in the discussion board forum description. That way they don't have to go looking for it in the syllabus or wherever it may be located. It's just nice to make things easy for them to find and kind of take the guesswork out of, when they need to be posting. So this way it's clear and it's right in front of them. So, and on that same note, when you are creating multiple discussion board forums, say you wanted to have a forum for every week, a nice trick you can do is to, if you notice down here under forum availability, I am making the forums available only after the previous one has closed down. So this particular forum was discussion number 3, and if you notice, it's going to be available on February 18th at 12 a.m. If I go back to our other screen, you can see that discussion 2 closed on February 17th at 11:59. So a minute later, discussion number 3 opens up. What that does is it helps to reduce what's called the cognitive overload. So rather than your students seeing all the discussion board forums at once, they're only seeing the most current ones. You'll also notice on this screen here that the display until fields are left blank because we're going to leave them up for them to refer back to if they need to, but we're just kind of releasing the availability of them. So I hope that makes sense. If anyone needs me to clarify that a little bit further, I can. Okay. So again, I've provided another example of another tip to reorder your discussion board forums in reverse chronological order. And the reason you would want to do that is because if you did have a long list of forums that were being made available, you'd want the most current one to be right on top. That way they don't have to scroll down to the bottom to access the most current forum. They're just going to see the most current one right at the top. It kind of creates a subtle priority for them as to which one's the most important they should be looking at. So when you do create forums in Blackboard, generally they get listed in just chronological order. So you have to manually reorder them in reverse chronological order. Sabia, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't know if you were going to do that, but could you quickly show us how to reorder them manually? Thanks.
Sure, I can do that, yeah. Let me go into app sharing here. And hopefully everyone can see this. Let me just rearrange my screen a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so this is a look of a discussion board forum in Blackboard from the instructor view. And the way you reorder your forums is you'll notice that there's these little up and down arrows. It may not cooperate in my app sharing mode. Hold on a sec. Let's see if I can. It looks like it's getting a little jittery, probably because I'm running Collaborate on top of it. So I don't think it's going to cooperate for me. But basically where you see these up and down arrows, you just hold down and drag your forum. Yeah, it's not going to cooperate. You're just going to click your mouse button and drag it to its new location. So if you have any problems with that, it really is pretty simple. It's just not cooperating right now. But again, you just look for these up and down arrows, hold down your mouse button and drag it into the order that you wanted. Let's see here. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, Caroline, that I'm teaching an online course using discussion board this week, and that's how I usually do it myself. It's very easy, just as you said, with the double-pointed arrow, is just to hold it down and to move it to a different location. It definitely works, and it's a lot easier for the students. They see the most current topic at the very top. They've gotten used to it and expect to see that. So, from week to week, with a new discussion board forum, they expect it to be at the very top.
Okay, thank you. So there's my confirmation that it really is easy to do this. It just wouldn't cooperate for me. But if anyone has trouble, or questions with that, feel free to give me a call and I can walk you through it. Okay, so this is sort of a management tip. Once you do start to get a lot of, say, traffic on the discussion board, and maybe you're going in and reading the threads, and you're seeing that it's a lot of work, because potentially it could be. If you don't want to read those threads in Blackboard, what you can do is, by checking these boxes here, you can hit this collect button then, and let me take you to the next screen. That's going to put it into a printer-friendly view, and you can then print it. You can also save it to a Word file, and you'll be able to read these postings offline. So it's a little bit, gives you a little bit more freedom where you're not quite glued to the computer. And if you were, say, grading these forums and you posted these or you pasted these into a Word file, that's going to be a quick way, if you were using grammar and punctuation as one of the grading criteria, that'll be a quick way for you to, you know, catch those, because Word is going to catch those mistakes. So just a little tip for you if you didn't want to read all the postings in Blackboard. You do have the option to collect the threads and either print them or save them to a Word file. And again, we're going to have a few minutes afterwards, so I'll kind of walk through this process live, and you'll get a chance to see what it looks like in real time. So we're going to move on now to grading the forums. Can I ask, just do a quick poll of those that are listening if you've used discussion board forums for grading in the past? Okay, so a mixed half and half it looks like. When you are creating the forum, you do have the option down here to make it gradable. So again, I mentioned that your students might be a little bit more motivated if they knew that they were going to get a grade for their discussion board. So that's an option to do this. Once you enable grading, what that's going to do is it's going to create a column in the grade center, and it's going to treat it just like, you know, an assignment basically. If you're familiar with the grade center in Blackboard, this is fully integrated with the grade center. So, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about what I've done with this particular forum. So I'm grading the forum. You do have the option to grade at the thread level, but you want to avoid that and grade at the forum level. And when you click this little button here, you're going to have the points possible that you're going to select. So this particular forum is worth 12 points. And down here where it says show participants in need grading status after every 3 posts. So what's going to happen here is that I've told the students that they need to create 1 original post and then reply to 2 of their classmates. So once they reply to that second classmate, that's their 3rd post, and they've met the requirement then. That way you don't have to go in and tally up the posts. It's all done automatically. So this is a great little feature that if you were going to have them do a set number of posts, this would keep track of all that for you. And what I included this just to give you an idea that of the instructor view. Once you enable grading, right here it says grade forum. So you can go into directly into the forum and grade from there. You can also go into the grade center and access the same information from the grade center. So I just wanted you to be aware that this little grade forum button is only something you would see. Your students would not see that. Okay, so use a rubric for grading discussion contributions. Can I ask if anyone has used rubrics in the past, if you're familiar with how rubrics work? We have a question coming in, so I'm just going to wait for Sabia to type her question. Okay. Okay, so Blackboard has a new tool. It's called their Interactive Rubric tool, and this screenshot is a picture of what that looks like. It's a really nice tool, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about it. On the top we have, I'm just going to turn my pointer this way. On the top we have the levels of mastery, I guess, or the levels of competence that the students are graded on. And then the column represents the criteria that you're grading them on. Now this is just a sample rubric. You can create as many columns or rows that you need. You can change, you know, the descriptions. This is completely editable. But this is a sample one that we have used for the discussion board, and this just gives you a little idea of how you could grade a discussion board forum using this type of rubric. So in this case, we're grading on the knowledge of the subject matter, evidence of research, and grammar. But you can certainly have more levels of criteria. And how you use Blackboard's rubric is you do that when you're creating the forum. The screen might be looking familiar to you by now. There's an option here to add a rubric. And you can either select a rubric that you've already created in Blackboard. You can create a new rubric, or you can use an existing rubric and modify it a little bit. So certainly if you have a rubric, though, that you have in Microsoft Word or in a PDF, you can use that as well. It doesn't have to be Blackboard's rubric tool, but I just wanted you to be aware that this is available. What's nice about the rubric tool is that your students will see it. So if you notice in the far right corner where it says Show Rubrics to Students, when they are creating their post, the rubric is going to be viewable to them. So there's no guesswork about what they should be writing and how they're going to be graded. So it's a really nice tool for both you and your students. Takes the subjectivity out of the grading, or at least helps to take it out. And it gives the students an idea of exactly what it is you're looking for in the discussion board posting. Go ahead, Sabia.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to go in advance or just digress from your order. If this is going to be too long, you can just skip it and maybe let me know later on. But how do we create, how do we use the one that is already existing? Is it like a document that we can attach, or is does Blackboard do something automatically once he recognizes the document?
Great question. And we have these rubrics, some sample rubrics in some of our training courses. I can download that and email you the package. You would then just upload it into your own Blackboard course. So I'm happy we can share this information, and this is in Blackboard's format, so it's really, you would just go into Blackboard's course copy feature, and you can import it through there. And I can walk anyone through that if they wanted to do that after class. So yeah, we can definitely get you these rubrics to use in your own class, and you can change them or use them as is. So they're nice tools. This is just giving you a side-by-side view of when you do have a rubric enabled for a forum, your students are going to see grading information. That's how they would access the rubric. So they would click that button and they would see a little button that said View Rubric. And then we looked at the instructor view already. You would just see the grade forum, and you can grade directly from there, or as I mentioned, you can also go into the Grade Center. So just wanted to give you a little side-by-side view of what that looks like. And this view is from the Grade Center. So if you remember earlier, I had set the criteria to where students had to make 3 postings, And this shows that all these green exclamation points are the students that have completed that requirement. So that's what it would look like if you went into the Grade Center and viewed the forum from the Grade Center. And this is just what it looks like if you were going to grade using Blackboard's interactive rubric tool. What makes it interactive is that you can grade directly from the rubric. You simply select the appropriate button that reflects, what they earned for that particular criteria. You can add feedback. So I've added feedback here on all 3 of these criteria. And once you submit that, it gets recorded directly into the Grade Center. So I'm going to go ahead and go into our application sharing and walk you through some of this in real time so you can get a better sense of it. Before I do that, are there any other questions? Oh, good, Corinne. Yeah, let's go in and we'll take a closer look right now. Let me just get my screen back up here. Yeah, the rubrics have been very helpful. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen here. And hopefully it's big enough, because I noticed that it looked a little shrunk down, but hopefully it's okay. I'm just going to move my... Bear with me here. I'm just reordering a few things on my desktop here. Okay. Okay, I just want to start kind of from the beginning and show you as far as how you would make a forum, how that would look. So you need to go into your discussion board tool link. So I'm just going to click that link here. And to create a forum, you click on this Create Forum link. You give your forum a name. We'll call this our help forum. And in the description is where you would provide the question or the substance of what the student is going to be contributing here. Again, this is where I provided those due dates. So this is the place to take care of that, is in this description. And under forum availability, the default is set to yes, which is what you want. But here, under the date and time restrictions, if you remember, I had those forums being available only after the other one closed. So I can set my date and time restrictions. I'll say March 30th, and I will say at midnight, so at 12 a.m. So that way your students will not see this until March 30th at 12 a.m. You, however, will still see this forum when you're logged into Blackboard. So these are those forum settings that are going to really allow you to, get creative, I guess. So if you remember, I encouraged you to allow members to subscribe to the forum. So that's going to be right here on this subscribe field. And I suggest that you include the body of the post in the email. That's going to give you the whole message in your email rather than a link to the post. And you can do this, again, to any forum, not just the help forum. I would avoid these two features down here where it says allow members to rate posts and to force moderation. That creates a lot of additional work for you, so I would just avoid those in general. And your grade option is also under the forum settings. If we select Grade Discussion Board Forum, we can put in the points possible. However, if I go ahead and add a rubric, let me select a rubric. it's going to assign the points automatically based on the points that are distributed in the rubric. So that's kind of taken care of for you. And you'll notice that you can see now that we have our rubric down here and that it's used for grading, but by default it's not going to show to the students. So we want to say yes with the scores. I'm going to select. So that way now the students can see it. And once we're done with that, we just click our submit button. And it's going to, I think you have a little bit of a lag, so I'll try and scroll slowly. It puts our form right at the very bottom. But remember, we can reorder these. And I don't think, oh, there, let me do it this time. So that question came up before, you know, how do you do that? But now it's behaving. So I'll go ahead and move my help form up. And all I'm doing is holding down my mouse and dragging it up the page. So I have two help buttons, and you notice that I don't have a description in this one. You definitely would want to provide that description. I'll also, I'm just reading the comments here, so bear with me. Yeah, Corinne, I'm going to show you what that looks like as far as accessing the rubric. So if you notice in this Discussion 1, Ethics and Fraud, we do have some comments that are on here, some contributions. So let me click that forum. And again, this is your view, the grade forum. This is what you would see if you were grading from the forum versus the Grade Center. We can see that Louisa Alcott has made her 3 required posts, so I'll go ahead and grade her. And because I enlarged the screen, I'm not getting it all to fit on one page, so I apologize. So what I'm going to do here is edit the grade. I can go ahead and just give her points right here, or as I pointed out, I can view the rubric in the window and select the points that I think are appropriate. Great job. We'll kind of stick to the same formula that I had before. And again, feedback is really meaningful to your students. So if you were going to give them fewer points, you would want to explain exactly why they were being docked for their points. And then you just hit the